Everyone's been talking about coronavirus non-stop for the last few months, but maybe now you might be starting to think, what happened with all that Brexit stuff? It might seem like a long time ago now, but the Brexit saga went on for ages, with endless debates and protests and political scandals, and believe it or not, the debate is still rumbling on. So the question we're asking is, what the happened with Brexit, and what the is happening now? First off, let's have a little recap over what's happened so far. In case you missed it, David Cameron, the former UK Prime Minister, promised to hold a referendum on whether the country should leave the European Union and take more control of our own laws, a process that became known as Brexit. Cameron said we shouldn't leave, but his side ended up losing the referendum, so he quit the next day and was replaced by Theresa May, whose time in office was marked by doing a silly dance and telling a journalist that the naughtiest thing she ever did as a child was run through a field of wheat. She originally campaigned to stay in the EU, but when the public voted for Brexit, she said she'd get on board with that too. Meanwhile, the opposition Labour Party was led by Jeremy Corbyn, who, having been pro-Brexit all his life, switched to the Remain side at the last minute, in a manner that some said was kind of unconvincing. Anyway, it was Theresa May's job to negotiate a divorce settlement with the EU, so to make life easier for herself, she called an early election with the aim of getting more politicians from her own party in Parliament, which was a very clever plan, except for the fact it didn't work. She stayed on as Prime Minister, but the Conservative Party that she was the leader of lost its majority in Parliament, making it even harder for her Brexit plans to be passed. Impossible, in fact, because after she successfully agreed a draft deal with the EU, it was then rejected by the UK Parliament not once, not twice, but 3 times, after which Theresa May decided enough was enough and she quit, crying on her way out of the office. Amazingly, that was only about a year ago. When she left, Boris Johnson took over as Prime Minister. He seemed optimistic, but people said that realistically he would never be able to get the EU to renegotiate the draft Brexit deal. But then at the last minute, he actually did manage it, although exactly how different the new version was is a matter of debate. Either way, Boris Johnson presented Parliament with a new proposal and asked them to approve it. But, of course, like Theresa May, his party still didn't have a majority in Parliament and politicians were still voting against him. He said he was so determined to leave the EU that he was prepared to ditch the deal altogether, which is known as the no-deal option. And he promised, deal or no deal, the UK would definitely leave the EU by the end of October. But other politicians in Parliament, mainly from the Labour Party, teamed up to stop him, meaning that actually Brexit didn't happen in October after all. Are you keeping up with this? Of course, somewhere in the middle of all this, the government was taken to court for trying to suspend Parliament during the height of the Brexit crisis, in a move that was later ruled unlawful. So unlawful, in fact, that the court literally said that legally speaking, the thing that had just happened never actually happened at all, even though it definitely did. And in any case, it was against the Constitution, which incidentally doesn't exist. So, to try and get Brexit done, Boris Johnson held another election in which his main slogan was
"Get Brexit done."
And unlike Theresa May, this election actually worked out okay for him. Boris Johnson's Conservative Party got a majority in Parliament, while the Labour Party lost a load of seats. That was in December, and within days, Parliament passed a Brexit plan so the divorce settlement could at last go ahead. Then, finally, on the 31st of January 2020, the UK left the EU and Brexit was officially complete. Except, it wasn't, because in fact, all the arguments and debates and political wrangling so far had actually all just been about the divorce settlement itself. But there's still the small matter of reaching a trade deal with the EU. After all, both the EU and the UK do kind of rely pretty strongly on each other for trade. In fact, when we say trade deal, it actually affects a whole lot more than that, like whether Brits can go and live in Europe without having to get a visa, and whether your grocery shopping will be more expensive because of new tariffs. So the plan was have a transition period that takes us through 2020, where politicians from the UK and the EU can get together and figure this whole thing out. If they fail to reach an agreement though, they could resort to the no-deal option, meaning there's no special treatment between the two sides. Companies could be hit by trade tariffs and free movement across the border would end. That's an option that most politicians are very keen to avoid, with some saying it would be a total economic disaster. But time is now running out for the UK and the EU to reach a deal, and there's just a couple of little problems. The two sides can't seem to agree on anything, and in case you hadn't noticed, there's a global pandemic which kind of makes everything a little bit tricky. Make sense? You see, the thing about this transition period we're in now is that it was meant to be a kind of smooth ride out of the EU, but it's actually a very short period of time to come up with an entire trade deal. Those can take years and years to agree on. Towards the end of June, the pressure was growing because the UK had to decide whether or not to extend the transition period. In the end, politicians decided not to extend it, meaning the deadline in December now seems final. That means if we run out of time without reaching a deal, we would automatically revert back to the no-deal option. We've done videos about this option before, looking at exactly what the implications would be. But crucially, it would mean that British laws would be completely separated from EU ones, and tariffs and border checks could potentially kick in straight away. People have different opinions about exactly what the impact of a no-deal Brexit would be, and whether it would cause chaos or not. Boris Johnson has said he wants a deal, and the negotiators are working on it right now. But if he doesn't get the deal he wants, he says he's prepared to go down the no-deal option instead. What we don't know is, would he really be prepared to do that, to walk away from the negotiating table? That's something we're just going to have to wait and find out.